Hey guys, welcome back to the spreadsheet lessons. My name is Edwin Effendi, and in today's lesson, lesson number 3, we're going to talk about data types, entering text, inputting numbers, working with dates and formulas, and also editing and deleting data, and of course, data autofill that we've talked about in the last previous lesson. So without further ado, let's continue. So let's start with data type. In data types, there are 4 major different data types, which is text, okay, numbers, and then dates, and also formulas. Now, by default, these cells are actually being set into automatic as their format or data type. So we're gonna insert one row up here. So we're gonna explain it to you that this is automatic, and Google or the spreadsheet will actually try and detect whether or not that these are text, numbers, dates, or formulas, right? So we can go like this. Text, right in my name. It has detected that this is a text, okay? But when we go to format, it's still in automatic, all right? Now, when we put numbers, let's say number 3, right? It gets aligned to the right, which means that the spreadsheet has actually detected that this is a number, which is great, fantastic. But dates are a little bit more icky and a little bit more complicated, right? So let's just say that today's date is the 5th of June, and in my country, we actually specify dates according to date, month, and year. So it's a little bit different when it comes to the United States, and we usually state the month first with numbers, of course, and also the date and then the year. But that's just different format of different countries. So let's just say we try and follow my format first, which is the 5th of June, 5, 6, and 24, right? And you get something like this, right? But the problem is, right, let's just say that we want to change the format, right? We change the format into this, right? Okay. And also we change the format into custom date and time, right? So we want to be something like this, apply, right? 6th of May 2024. Now, I did specify that we are not on the 6th of May. We are on the 5th of June 2024 as the making of this content, right? So, but here's the thing, right? Because I've said that we are different when it comes to the localities and how we write our text. We are right now in the US locale setting. So what we want to do first, right? What we want to do first, we can go in Google Sheet. We can go here, up there, settings, and then locale, right? Let's say it says United States, and in here it says this affects formatting details such as functions, dates, and currencies. Now, we want to set this to Indonesia first, if it does exist. Back then, it did not exist, I swear, right? Because we're kind of like non-existent somehow. And we go save and reload. Now, as you can see, the writing of the date has also changed into Bahasa Indonesia, but it is still in the US format. But we don't want to input this in a US format. We want to input this, right, in an Indonesian standard. So let's just say that we actually want to go manual, right? Manual Indo, okay? Right? And we come over here, right? So let's just say 5, 6, and 24, right? Let's see what happens, right? When we go into the other date formats, right? So we go with this one, the one with August. Now, it has changed completely to 5th of June and 2024, even though we've inputted the same, right? However, these two has different values significantly, right? So let's just say date 605. Yep, there you go. And then we change this one 050624. Now, that's because we've actually inputted our data on the first automatic one in a US locale format. And you got to be careful with this. You want to change your locale first before you actually change it into something else. So just in case you get something wrong, okay? Now, let's go to formulas, right? Formula is very, very simple. We just need to put an equal sign at the front, and this actually becomes a formula. Now, we can actually state, or we can actually reference as another cell. Let's just say I want this cell to be equal to Edwin, right? So I'm just gonna reference cell B2, and the next one is I'm gonna reference, okay, cell number B3, okay, B and then 3, okay, and that equates to 3. Now, here's the thing with formulas. Formulas can also be done, let's say like a multiplication or adding or even dividing, etc. And it can also be referenced, or you can actually input it manually. So let's just say we want to add 3 on top of 3, right? Let's just say equals to B3 plus 3, okay? It can actually do a mathematical formula, and it adds up 3 plus B3, and B3 has a value of 3. It will add up to 6, right? And the thing with formulas is that if you actually have an error, or you actually done something wrong, it will actually say an error on it. And let's just say that we want to do equal this, okay, and then times my name. Now this will come out as an error, or a value error, because this function multiply expects number values, but Edwin is a text, so you can't actually combine the two different data types together and do a mathematical function, which is also not possible in the real world. Okay, now we'll get to see how to enter text, right? And we'll move on to a new tab. So let's just say that since I have not introduced that to you, you can actually have multiple sheets in a same sheet, which is called tabs down here, and you can actually rename them, and you can reference them later in the future. Okay, now first of all I want to be on the new tab, okay, and then I want to start entering text. Now when you first enter text by default, right, some of these texts will get aligned into the left, the right, or the middle, and you can actually change them with their size, their fonts, and their colors, right? So let's just say we want to enter text first, right? Like my name, Edwin, and it gets aligned as left, as by default. And you can actually change them, right? The format and the fonts, okay? You can change them into something else, and let's just say by default it's Arial, right? And you can actually change them again, and let's just say the horizontal line, you can change to center, you can change to the right, depends on how you want. Now, and the next one is the vertical alignment. Of course, this does not look any different if you don't actually make the cell bigger, right? So as you can see, I've aligned it to the top, align middle, align bottom. So if we want to align all the way to the middle, you can actually do that. Now, the next one is to wrap, overflow, or clip. Now, because this part here, right, this part here is not exactly a long text, right? So I'm just gonna copy and paste my name really long, right? And as you can see, this actually is overflow, like it is set on overflow. The thing with overflow is that when you actually have a text, right, that is on the next cell or right next to the row, right, it will actually kind of like clip it. So let's just say put my name here again, right? So it gets clipped right there. And you can also set it to wrap, which will adjust the cell to wrap the text, hence making the cell a lot bigger and accordingly to the content, right? You can also do clip, right? Clip is a little bit like the same when we before we actually inputted something in the cell. So we're gonna delete this, right? And as you can see, it still doesn't overflow, and if we actually put this in overflow, it overflows again. So yeah, just be wary of that. You can also change the text rotation depending on how you want this, right? And you can also change the color of these texts, right, by just clicking here, which has a underline on an A, right? And you can actually change the color into anything else that you want, right? You can also change the background here. You can also do other formatting such as bold, italic, strike through, and yeah, you can also insert links, and we'll talk about that in the future. All right. Next, we want to talk about inputting numbers. Of course, numbers has different formats such as decimals, places, currency, percentage, and of course, there's common errors that we need to address. Now, when we first enter a number inside our spreadsheet, right, as you can see, let's say 1,000, right, it gets aligned to the right. Now, why is this? And why is it by default to the right? No, it's not because Excel is trying to say, hey, this is a number, just because this is a number. Because numbers usually comes in values, and when you actually input a larger number, it actually is a lot harder when you align it to the left and the value gets bigger and bigger. It gets really hard to distinguish which one is bigger, and the value gets a bit more jumbled. So let's just say that we're gonna input 100 or 10,100, something like this, right? 10,100. And as you can see on here, you actually have one more numericals on the left side, and this indicates that, hey, this number is a larger number, right? So but if we actually have this, right, we're gonna go copy and paste, and we're gonna do a left alignment. Yeah, our brain gets a little bit harder for us to adjust and see the numbers itself. So because we work in decimals and we work in places, thousands, hundreds, whatsoever, right? And it actually gets easier for our brains to actually divide those to the right, because that's how we work in numbers, and this is why it is automatically by default. Now, decimals, right? Decimals. The thing with decimals is that decimal has different formats when it comes to Excel and also in Google Sheets, right? So let's just say we're gonna put 10,000.100, right? So it's gonna be 10.1, right? And we actually wanna input more. So we don't, let's just say, because dollars and cents, right, we actually have two decimals, so we can actually increase the decimals, right, by clicking this increase decimals on the page. Now we can actually increase or decrease, but when we actually do a mathematical equations, like let's say like 10.1 blah 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 blah, it actually gets easier as we round them down, right? So we actually want to decrease the decimals, right, and it can actually get rounded up or down, but the exact value will still be the same, which is stated up here, 10.1.3 blah 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 blah, right? So when we do calculation, it doesn't actually times 10.137, but it's just for the display purposes, right? It actually has reduced it all the way up. We marked it up to 137, so that can be handy time to time, right? Okay, now next is percentage, right? When we deal with percentage, right, we are dealing with whole numbers, because 100% is actually 1. So when we actually want to be 1 out of 100, right, we don't want to say, hey, 100, right, and make that a percentage, right? And it's gonna be it's gonna be stated as 10,000%. So if we actually do 0.1, right, when we actually already input this as a percentage, right, it's gonna be inputted as that. So percentage, right, it's gonna be stated as 0.1%. Now that's the exact opposite, because we've actually stated this cell to become percentage. Now before we actually want to input these into percentage, we want to work in decimal. So let's just say if we actually want to put in 5% or 50%, like let's just go with 50%, we go 0.5, right? 0.5. Now when we actually, right, command these to be percentage, it's gonna be 50%. So 0.586 and 4, okay, and when we convert these into percentage, right, percentage, it's gonna be 58.64, which is really, really handy when it comes to mathematical equations, etc., right? Now, the thing with, I find that the most common errors would be is the fact, some of the common errors that I do find when entering number is that when we actually input zeros at the front, right? And the zeros actually disappear, right? And sometimes this happens when we want to input like barcodes that starts with a 0 or things like that. Now, this can be done by the single quote mark, and also we're gonna input 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? And that gets by default, right, is inputted as 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, this means that even though we've stated zeros at the front, we can still do mathematical equation at the front. So we're gonna do this plus 10, right? But the 0 gets missing. So what are we gonna do about these, right? Now, when we do addition in this type of situation, let's just say the left side has actually a number format of 8 digits. So we're gonna do 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, or 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 8 digits, right? And before we do that, we're gonna go 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're gonna put that single quotation mark at the front, right? And this will actually state it into that. Now, when we do a formula of addition, let's just say this plus 3, oops, not like that, wrong, and plus 3, okay? Now, it's gonna revert into the ones without 0. Now, how do we do this? Now, we can't achieve this by putting a single quote at the front like we did, because this is gonna break the formula, and this will actually become a text, and it will just state the formula, right? And if we actually delete that, we're gonna go back into numbers. Now, of course, we can actually solve this in the future when it comes to number format, but for now, I'm gonna show you, right? We're gonna do custom number format, right? And you can actually choose a lot. There's a lot when it comes to currency, but the way to do this, right, because we actually want 8 digits, right? So we're gonna put as 0, 0, 0, 0, okay, 0, 0, 0, 0. So it's gonna be an 8-digit format. We're gonna click apply, right? And it's gonna state 0 at the front now, okay? So that's just the way that we do things. If you actually want to have something like an SKU that is based on numbers, and you actually have more, let's just say 8 digits or 9 digits, etc., and you do mathematical calculation with this, and it gets easier if you actually do this at the front. All right, now we're gonna talk about dates, and date has actually specific functions, and it is embedded in the cells, and it also is a format of a cell. Now let's work on with dates, right? So when we first enter the dates, remember how we actually need to change the locale? Well, since we've actually already changed into Indonesian, right, we can go 5, 6, 24, and today is the 5th of June 24, right? And if we actually change the formatting into a date, right, which states the month like this, it states the 5th of June 2024, which is correct. Now, we don't want to keep entering the date. Sometimes it gets really clunky. Now, there is a second way to do this, which is called using data validation. Now, data validation, you can go up here on the menu, go data, and scroll down, and it says data validation, and then you go add rule, and then criteria is a validate and done, right? So you can close that, and in this cell, you can actually input and still input any type of dates or any type of data. So let's just say we put a text and it has an error, right? Invalid input must be a valid date. And sometimes you can input 5, 6, 24, right? Which is also a valid date. But it is actually a lot easier if you go double click and there's a pop-up of a date, and you can just select the date that you actually want. Now, you can also, right, do the formatting for each of these rows into a date that you specifically want, and it will come up as that. Now, the problem with data validation is that it doesn't automatically happen to the next cell that you actually want to edit, and you actually need to put data validation on these cells too. So you can't just double click that. You can certainly copy and paste this one to the bottom, and you get the data validation straight away. And of course, you when it comes to data, when it comes to dates, right, you can actually do a mathematical equation as well using a formula. So you can just do like this. So let's just say how many days has it elapsed since, today. So according to this date. So let's just say that I had my celebration, New Year celebration, right? New Year celebration, which is on the, well, of course, where else? 31st of December, right? And how long has it elapsed, the days, when it comes to, you know, this, right? Until today. So we're gonna do equal this minus this, and it will say that 157 days has elapsed since I've had my New Year's Eve party. That's great, of course, right? But the thing also with dates is that you need to be really careful with the locales. You want to change your locale first before you start anything with your formulas, right? And you actually want to do it according to your own locales, or of course according to your own habits, right? Of course, dates can also be specified using other specifics, such as with the /, and you can also do custom date formats, such as only the day and month, or only day and year if you want. And you can also do it with a dash or anything else. And yeah, you can certainly change the way you abbreviate things, right? You can just do apply like that, so it will go with a / instead of a dash, right? You can certainly do whatever you want, or you can just have space too. Let's just do that. Okay, let's just do that quickly. Custom date and time, we go like this and then put a space there. Here we delete that, apply, and we actually have a space now. We don't want this to be like this, all right? We want this to be just like how it used to be, like this, right? So let's just apply that for now. And you can of course change this into a full month, okay? Full abbreviation, such as Augustus, which is a December in Bahasa Indonesia. And there we go, that is dates. Next, we want to talk about formulas. Formulas, just like I've explained it before, it starts with an equal sign, right? So let's just state that A1 is 1, okay? B1 is 2, and C is 3. Let's just state this as a number, because of course formulas is a lot easier in Excel when we deal with numbers, right? And in B number 3, right, we want to state that what is the total, right? Let's just say what is the total, right? So we can do something like, now we can do equal this, okay, A1 plus B1 plus C1 equals error. Add expect numbers value, but 1 is a text and cannot proceed. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it has something to do with my keyboard, sorry guys, and it states that this is Japanese, not English, okay? All right, so I had trouble there, right? So you got to be careful when it comes to inputting, of course, just like that, okay? You can also do other formulas, which we'll talk about later. Let's just say sum, which gets used a lot, right? From value, sum of this to this, and it equals to 6. Now, formula has a lot of functions, right? And it needs to be divided into each and every single section in the future lessons. But when you want to start with formula, you can of course start with an equal sign at the start. Of course, we can also do subtraction, which is something like equal B3 minus C3, okay, equals to 0. And of course, you can also do multiplication and any other kind of like mathematical formulas out there, okay? Now, just a reminder, you cannot actually multiply a text with a number. So let's just say we have Edwin here, right? Edwin, okay? And then you want to do something like this times by Edwin, and that is not possible. Just a small reminder, okay? Now, editing and deleting in any software is quite simple. You can either do an undo or you can just simply delete, right? So let's just say we have Edwin here, right? And then we have 1, 2, 3, which is a text. And you want to delete from one of these cells. You can select the cells, right? And then just press delete, right? Delete. Or if you actually want to do I did that as a mistake, you do Control Z or Command Z at the same time, right? Or not the same time, but Control Z for PC and Command Z for Mac, right? Okay. Now you can also clear out multiple lines. Let's just say we've highlighted these two, right? And then you press delete. And of course, you can just do your selection with your keyboard too, which is up and down, right? Shift down, and then do delete, right? That, right? Now, the trouble with this is that sometimes the cell formatting gets in the way, and this is where automatic comes in handy. So it automatically detects the content. But if you actually have selected this as a number, and then you actually want to do this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It actually has a number stated straight away, and if you actually put a text, it becomes a text again. So again, it really depends on what you're doing. Now, the last thing that we want to do is the really fun bit when it comes to Excel. It can actually do something like an auto-complete function, which is called the autofill. You can actually copy or complete a sequence like days, weeks, etc. in a cell, or you can copy it from one cell to the other. Okay, so let's just start with something like this right at the start, right? So we have 1, and then we can drag these, right, to copy one to the next. Now we can also do a sequence like, let's say 1 and 2, but you need to actually have a sequence first to do that, right? So it does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you can actually do something like this: 1, 2, 3, and then you actually want to do something like another sequence, right? So yeah, there you go. So another part would be like something like Monday, Tuesday, right? And we want to continue on until Sunday and then Monday again, right? So, but this time it goes Monday, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, right? So we go Wednesday, right? And we can actually do something like that, an autofill, or we can do something like that. We can do Monday, Tuesday, right? And then we can do an autofill. Now, if we do an autofill like this, right, it actually copies it. Why doesn't it follow the rules of sequencing, right? Why doesn't it actually make this into from Monday to Sunday? Because this locale is actually set on, right, Indonesia. So we go Senin, Selasa, right? And let's see what it does, right? Let's see what it does, okay? Has it detected? Correct. It actually does a sequence, right? And it actually says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, which is Senin, Selasa, Rabu, Kamis, Jumat, Sabtu, Minggu. Now, if we actually change the locale again, settings, right, locale to the United States, okay, or there you go, United States, save and reload, okay, whoops, there you go. Now, we do Monday, Tuesday, right, and here comes the fun part. Ta-da! It actually does that. So you actually have to really be careful when it comes to locales, right? Of course, it can also do an autofill, right? So let's just go scroll down, right? Let's just say that we have a 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4, right? Let's just say we do an autofill like this, right? So it does the sequencing by itself. Now, we actually have a formula here that adds the column A with column B. So column A plus column B. Now, once we've done that, it actually suggested an autofill that you can actually copy the formula down all the way. Now, we want to cancel that first. Of course, you can do yes, right? But you can actually make an autocomplete by double-clicking on the dot below as an autofill, right? Or you can simply drag, right? Or you can simply double-click, and it completes the autofill by itself. It just feels like magic for me when it comes to Excel. All right. So I hope that has been very helpful for you. My name is Edwin Effendi, and in the next video, we're gonna talk more on formulas and functions. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.